Marie, a cleaning woman, is hired by a wealthy family. But when she arrives at their house and sees the son, she freezes as she discovers he is actually her own son. Marie woke up with the same recurring dream that had tormented her for the past 10 years. She dreamed of her son's frightened gaze, his small hands clinging to her in desperation before hooded men forcibly separated them. That day, her life had completely collapsed. Trying to shake off the nightmare, she got out of bed with slow movements and headed to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror, observing the deep circles under her tired eyes. At 42, pain and anguish had left their mark on her face, prematurely wrinkling her skin. After a quick shower, she dressed in her work uniform, black pants, a white shirt, and the cleaning company's logo embroidered on the top pocket. She tied her hair back in a ponytail and put on her identification badge. She was ready to face another day. It was 6 in the morning when she left her modest apartment for the first house she had to clean that day. Marie had been working as a domestic worker for a cleaning services company for 8 years. It wasn't her dream job, but it provided a stable income, something she desperately needed after the tragedy she had endured. As she walked through the still deserted streets, she remembered how she had come to this point. Years ago, she and her husband lived a quiet and happy life with their 5-year-old son. Both worked hard to give their son everything he needed, but on a fateful day, when they were returning home after visiting relatives, their world fell apart. Criminals assaulted them, and in the chaos, they snatched her son away. Despite intense searches and police cooperation, they never managed to find him. Her husband couldn't bear the anguish and fell into a deep depression that eventually led him to take his own life. Since then, Marie's life had been reduced to an endless succession of grey days, full of pain and despair. When she arrived at the first house, she greeted the owner with a forced smile. Over the next few hours, she focused on performing her tasks with efficiency and professionalism, as she did every day. Vacuuming, mopping, dusting, making beds. She moved her hands with agility, leaving every corner shiny and gleaming. She was good at her job, and she strove to do it well because it was all she had left. At the end of the day, she returned to her small apartment, had a light dinner, and went to bed, hoping to sleep without the nightmares haunting her. But like every night, memories of that terrible day assaulted her, robbing her of rest. The next morning, her routine repeated itself. After cleaning a couple of houses, she received a call from her boss. "Marie, can you come to the office for a moment? I have an interesting proposal for you." Intrigued, she went to the company's offices, wondering what her boss wanted. When she arrived, the older woman greeted her with a smile. "Marie, thank you for coming. I have a special opportunity for you. A very wealthy family has contacted me looking for first-class cleaning service for their mansion. When I mentioned you, they were very interested. Apparently, you have impressed them a lot in some of the houses where you have worked." Marie looked surprised. A wealthy family wanted her to clean their mansion. She had never been offered such a job before. "Well, I don't know what to say because there are other girls on the team who also do an excellent job." "Exactly why, Marie. You have a reputation for being meticulous, efficient, and discreet. Those are the qualities they are looking for. Plus, they pay very well. We're talking about a significant sum that could change your life." Marie pondered for a moment. The extra money would be great, but she worried about having to deal with those high-class people. She didn't feel comfortable in those environments. "I don't know, boss. What if I don't fit in there? I've never worked for such wealthy people." "I trust you will do well, Marie. I know you'll feel a bit out of place at first, but you have a natural gift for this job. Plus, this opportunity could open doors to new and better jobs in the future. What do you say?" Marie thought for a few more seconds. She really needed the money and couldn't afford to pass up such an offer. Finally, she nodded. "All right, I'll do it. When do I start?" "Excellent decision. You start tomorrow bright and early. I'll send you the address and details via message. I'm sure you'll do great, Maria. Thank you for your commitment." With a mix of nervousness and excitement, Maria bid farewell to her boss and headed to her apartment. During the journey, she couldn't help but think about what awaited her. A wealthy family, a huge mansion. It would be quite a challenge, but also a unique opportunity. Upon arriving home, she prepared a simple dinner and went to bed early, trying to get some sleep. However, her mind kept racing about what would happen the next day. What would it be like to work for that family? Would she feel out of place? Would they be kind and respectful to her? Her thoughts kept her awake for much of the night. Finally, when the clock struck 6 a.m., she got up, dressed, and headed to the address her boss had provided. The journey felt endless, her heart pounding with anticipation. When she arrived at the address, she found herself facing huge and elegant iron gates. Pressing the intercom button, a deep voice responded, "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Good morning. I'm Maria, the new cleaning employee. Mrs. Jimenez from the service company sent me." "Ah, yes, we've been expecting you. Please come in." The gates opened slowly, revealing a long path lined with immaculate gardens and fountains. Maria cautiously made her way along the path, marveling at the imposing mansion that loomed before her. When she reached the front door, it opened, and an impeccably dressed butler greeted her. "Welcome, Miss Maria. Please come in." Maria crossed the threshold, feeling like she was entering a completely different world. The entrance was adorned with sumptuous furniture and valuable paintings. A huge crystal chandelier hung majestically from the ceiling, casting shimmering light throughout the foyer. "Mrs. Lucy is waiting for you in the living room. Please, follow me." The butler led her through corridors and staircases, while Maria gazed in awe at every detail of this luxurious abode. She had never been in such a place before. Finally, they arrived at a huge room decorated with exquisite taste. Standing in front of the fireplace, an elegant woman in her 50s stood up as they entered. "Welcome, Maria. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Lucy." Maria made a slight bow, suddenly feeling shy. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Lucy. Thank you for this opportunity. Please, make yourself comfortable. I see you're impressed by our house," Lucy said with a kind smile. "Well, it's a truly beautiful mansion. I've never been in a place like this before." "I imagine it must be quite a change for you, but I assure you that here you will be treated with the utmost respect. My husband and I hope you feel at home." Maria nodded, feeling herself gradually relaxing. "Thank you, Mrs. Lucy. I'll do my best." "Excellent. Let me explain your tasks to you." Lucy approached her and handed her a detailed list. "As you can see, it's a large house, so it will require your dedication and professionalism. I hope you can fulfill all the responsibilities." Maria examined the list, realizing that indeed it would be a much more demanding job than she was used to. Vacuuming, mopping, cleaning windows, ironing, organizing closets. "Don't worry, Mrs. Lucy. I'll do everything in my power to leave your home spotless." "I'm glad to hear that," Lucy said, giving her a warm smile. "If you have any questions or need anything, don't hesitate to ask Eric, our butler. He'll be at your disposal." At that moment, the butler appeared with a steaming cup of coffee. "Mrs. Lucy, your coffee." "Thank you, Eric." Lucy took the cup and then turned to Maria. "Well, I'll leave you to settle in and start your tasks. I'll be in my office if you need me." "All right, Mrs. Lucy. Thank you very much." Lucy left, leaving Maria alone with Eric. The butler observed her curiously. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Maria?" "No, thank you very much, Eric. I think I can start with the cleaning. Could you show me where the cleaning supplies are?" "Of course, follow me." Eric led her to a spacious room that seemed to be a utility room. It was perfectly organized, with shelves full of all kinds of cleaning products, vacuum cleaners, and other equipment. "Here you have everything you need. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask me." "Thank you very much, Eric. I'll try not to bother you too much." "Don't worry, miss. I'll be nearby if you need me." The butler withdrew, leaving Maria alone. She surveyed the supplies, suddenly feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility. Cleaning a mansion of such proportions would be quite a challenge. Taking a deep breath, she got down to work. She started with the foyer, working diligently to leave every corner sparkling. Then she moved on to the other rooms, traversing hallways, ascending and descending stairs, scrubbing, polishing, and organizing with meticulousness. As she progressed, she discovered the unique details of each room: the elegant furniture, the silk curtains, the beautiful paintings and statues. It all seemed like something out of a home decor magazine. At one point, she passed by a closed door. Her curiosity made her pause and approach. Peeking through the crack, she could see a huge canopy bed, a fireplace, and shelves filled with books. It must be the master bedroom. Deciding not to intrude on the owner's privacy, she continued on her way. She went up to the second floor, where several more doors awaited. Some were bedrooms, others bathrooms, and others living rooms. Maria marveled at the exquisiteness with which everything was decorated and organized. Finally, she reached a set of double doors carved from wood. Upon opening them, she found herself in a spacious room that appeared to be the study. Large windows offered an impressive view of the gardens. On an elegant mahogany desk, there was a framed photograph. She approached to examine it more closely. It depicted a family. Mr. and Mrs. Lucy, smiling happily alongside a child who would be around 10 years old. Maria felt a knot in her stomach as she looked at the image. The child's face seemed painfully familiar. Shaking her head, she tried to push away those thoughts. Surely it was just a coincidence. After all, it was a picture of a wealthy family, and in a way, all well-dressed, smiling children looked alike. She finished cleaning the study and moved on to the next room. There, on a huge canopy bed, she found another framed portrait. Once again, the image of the child caused a sense of familiar unease. Maria stopped, carefully observing every feature of the child's face. Those eyes, that smile, were identical to those of her son. She felt her heart pounding as thousands of thoughts crowded her mind. Could it be possible that this child was her biological son? The coincidence was too great to ignore. She remembered perfectly what her son looked like when he was abducted, with a fair complexion, large almond-shaped eyes, and a smile that lit up his angelic face. She had to make an effort not to collapse right there. For years, she'd longed to see her little boy again, but she had never dared to entertain such a great hope. And now, suddenly, she found herself facing a child who seemed to be the spitting image of her lost son. Taking a deep breath, she tried to calm herself. Perhaps she was rushing to conclusions. She had to stay calm and think rationally. Maria continued to scan the room, looking for more clues to confirm her suspicion. On a piece of furniture, she saw a folder with documents that seemed to belong to the child. Without hesitation, she approached and opened it carefully. There, she found birth certificates, medical records, and finally, what appeared to be an adoption document. Her heart was racing as she read the date, just a few days after her son's disappearance. It couldn't be a coincidence. That child was her son, she was convinced. Now everything made sense. The resemblance, the date of adoption. It was too much of a coincidence. She felt her legs trembling and had to lean against the furniture to keep from collapsing. After so many years of desperate searching and suffering, her son had been here, in this luxurious mansion, all this time. She closed the folder carefully, trying to process the overwhelming revelation. She had to find a way to confirm her suspicions without arousing suspicion. She couldn't rush or make mistakes. Her son's safety was at stake. She left the room with her heart pounding, trying to stay calm and carry on with her work. Every time she passed by that door, she had to make an effort not to go back in and examine the documents more thoroughly. As she continued cleaning the other rooms, her mind kept turning over the possibility that this child was her son. How had he ended up with this family? Had they been responsible for his abduction? At the mere thought, a chill ran down her spine. She had to find out the truth, but she had to be extremely careful. She couldn't afford to be discovered, as she feared for the child's safety. Finally, when she finished all the tasks, she headed to the exit where Eric was waiting for her. "Miss Maria, are you finished already?" "Yes, Eric. I've left everything spotless." "Excellent. Mrs. Lucy will be very pleased." The butler looked at her with a smile. "Do you need anything else before you leave?" Maria hesitated for a moment, debating internally whether she should ask or not. "Well, Eric, could you tell me a bit more about the family's child?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The butler looked at her with surprise. "The young master? Of course, he's a good boy, very polite and respectful. The lady and the gentleman adore him." "I see." Maria tried to hide her anxiety. "Do you know how long he's been living here?" "Let me think. I believe the young master came to this house about 10 years ago when he was just a little boy. The masters adopted him shortly after." 10 years. The date matched exactly with her son's disappearance. Maria felt like her heart was going to burst out of her chest. "I understand," she murmured, forcing herself to stay calm. "Thank you very much for the information, Eric." "You're welcome, miss. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to let me know." After saying goodbye, Marie left the mansion, almost unable to believe what she had just discovered. She walked back to her apartment quickly, her mind swirling with thousands of thoughts and emotions. Once home, she collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming down her cheeks. After so many years of suffering and despair, could it be possible that her son was alive and within her reach? Countless questions tormented her. How had he ended up in the hands of that wealthy family? Were they responsible for his abduction? And most importantly, how could she retrieve him without endangering his life? She spent the rest of the afternoon immersed in her thoughts, trying to devise a plan of action. She had to be extremely careful not to raise suspicions. If that family was capable of kidnapping a child, they would undoubtedly go to great lengths to keep him safe. Finally, she made a decision. She would return to the mansion the next day under the pretext of finishing some pending tasks. She would use the opportunity to observe the child more closely and gather further evidence to confirm her suspicion. She had to be absolutely sure before taking any action. With that purpose in mind, she got up from the bed, wiped away her tears, and prepared a light dinner. She knew it would be a long and anguishing night, but she couldn't afford to waste a single minute. Her son needed her more than ever. The next day, Marie arrived promptly at the Lucy mansion. Eric welcomed her with his usual courtesy. "Miss Marie, what a surprise to see you back so soon. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" "Good morning, Eric. The truth is I couldn't finish some tasks yesterday, and I would like to take the opportunity to complete them." Marie tried to sound as natural as possible. "Of course, no problem. Please, come in." The butler guided her back into the house. Marie took advantage of the opportunity to carefully observe every corner, searching for any clues that could confirm her suspicions. When they reached the second floor, Eric stopped in front of one of the doors. "Here is the young master's room. If you need to clean it, you can do so now." Maria's heart skipped a beat, seizing the opportunity she was looking for. "Yes, Eric, I would love to start here. Thank you." The butler nodded and withdrew, leaving Marie alone in front of the door. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob and entered. The room was even more impressive than she remembered. Huge windows flooded the space with natural light, and every detail reflected the taste and care of the owners. Marie approached the bed, where she saw the framed photograph of the child again. She studied it carefully, engraving every feature into her memory. There was no doubt that was her son. Determined to find more evidence, she began to search the drawers and closets with great care. In one of the drawers, she found some toys and drawings that seemed to be made by a young child. Her heart trembled as she recognized the style and motifs. They were identical to those her son used to make. She kept searching until she finally found a folder containing adoption documents. She examined them with trembling hands, confirming that the date matched exactly with her son's disappearance. She couldn't believe that after so many years her son had been so close all this time, living in the luxury and comfort of that wealthy family. How had he ended up here? What had he done to those monsters? Repressing a sob, she carefully put the documents back in place. She had to be cautious. She couldn't allow herself to be discovered. Her son's safety depended on it. She left the room and headed to the kitchen, where Eric was waiting. "Have you finished already, Miss Marie?" "Yes, Eric. I have left everything in order." She took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "Thank you very much for your help." "You're welcome. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to let me know." Maria nodded and said goodbye, heading for the exit. Once outside the mansion, she collapsed, crying inconsolably. After so long, her son was within her reach, and yet he seemed unreachable. She had to devise a plan to retrieve him. But how could she do it without endangering her life? How could she confront that powerful and wealthy family? On the way back to her apartment, her mind raced, trying to find a solution. Finally, she made a decision. She would go to the police and tell them everything she had discovered. They would have to help her retrieve her son. With renewed determination, she reached her home and dialed the emergency number. She had to act quickly before it was too late. Would they be the ones responsible for his abduction? And most importantly, how could she retrieve him without endangering him? Marie collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. After so much suffering and fruitless searching, the hope she had managed to keep afloat all these years seemed to come to life suddenly. But that same hope also represented overwhelming fear. She couldn't allow anything bad to happen to her son, not again. She spent the night awake, pondering possible courses of action. She had to be extremely cautious, as she was up against a powerful, wealthy family who was likely willing to do anything to keep the child under their control. A single mistake could cost her son his life. Finally, at dawn, Marie made a decision. She would return to the Lucy mansion and take the opportunity to observe the child more closely, searching for any clues that confirmed his identity. Perhaps she might even get the chance to speak with him and determine if he also had memories of his childhood. She needed more evidence to be absolutely sure before taking any drastic measures. When she arrived at the imposing mansion, Eric greeted her with his usual courtesy. "Miss Marie, what a surprise to see you back so soon. Is there anything else I can assist you with? Good morning, Eric. The truth is, yesterday I couldn't finish some tasks and I would like to take the opportunity to complete them. Marie tried to sound as natural as possible. Of course, no problem. Please, come in. Eric guided her back into the house. Marie took the opportunity to carefully observe every corner, searching for any clues that could confirm her suspicions. When they reached the second floor, the butler stopped in front of one of the doors. Here is the young master's room. If you need to clean it, you can do so now. Marie's heart skipped a beat. This was the opportunity she was looking for. Yes, Eric, I would love to start here. Thank you. The butler nodded and left Marie alone in front of the door. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob and entered. The room was even more impressive than she remembered. Huge windows flooded the space with natural light, and every detail reflected the taste and care of the owners. Marie approached the bed, where she saw the framed photograph of the child again. She gazed at it closely, engraving every feature into her memory. There was no doubt that was her son. Determined to find more evidence, she began to carefully search the drawers and closets. In one of the drawers, she found some toys and drawings that seemed to be made by a young child. Her heart trembled as she recognized the style and motifs. They were identical to those her son used to make. She kept searching until she finally found a folder containing adoption documents. She examined them with trembling hands, confirming that the date matched exactly with her son's disappearance. She couldn't believe that after so many years, her son had been all this time so close, living in the luxury and comfort of that wealthy family. How had he ended up here? What had he done to those monsters? Suppressing a sob, she carefully put the documents back in place. She had to be cautious. She couldn't let them discover her. Her son's safety depended on it. She left the room and headed to the kitchen where Eric was waiting for her. Have you finished already, Miss Marie? Yes, Eric. I've left everything in order. She took a deep breath, struggling to maintain her composure. Thank you very much for your help. You're welcome. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to let me know. Marie nodded and said goodbye, heading towards the exit. Once outside the mansion, she collapsed, crying inconsolably. After so long, her son was within her reach, and yet he seemed unreachable. She had to devise a plan to retrieve him. But how could she do it without endangering her life? How could she confront that powerful and wealthy family? On the way back to her apartment, her mind raced, trying to find a solution. Finally, she made a decision. She would go to the police and tell them everything she had discovered. They would have to help her retrieve her son. With renewed determination, she arrived home and dialed the emergency number. She had to act quickly before it was too late. Police, how can I help you? Good afternoon. I need to report a kidnapping case. Marie's voice trembled with emotion. My son was abducted 10 years ago, and I have just discovered that he may be in the hands of a wealthy family. The operator listened attentively as Marie explained in detail what she had discovered. When she finished, there was a pause before the operator responded. I understand, ma'am. It's a very delicate situation. I will send an officer right away so you can file your report and provide us with all the information you have. It's important that you don't attempt anything on your own. You could endanger your son's life. Yes, I know. Marie wiped her tears with desperation. Please, you must help me get him back. He's my only son, and I've been searching for him for so many years. Don't worry, we'll do everything we can. An officer will be with you shortly, stay calm, and don't do anything until we arrive." "Okay, thank you." Marie hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. She had finally taken the first step, but now she had to wait for the police to act. She didn't know how long it would take, and the idea that something could happen to her son in the meantime terrified her. Desperation overwhelmed her once again. To try to calm her nerves, she started preparing some coffee. As the hot liquid filtered, there was a knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat, but when she opened it, she found 2 officers standing there. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Officer Ramirez, and this is Officer Guzman. We were informed about your call. Can we come in?" "Yes, please, come in." Maria ushered them in and led them to the small living room. The officers took their seats and instructed her to begin recounting the events. "Well, ma'am," Officer Ramirez pulled out a notebook. "You've informed us that your son was kidnapped 10 years ago and that you now believe you've located him. Please, tell us in detail what you've discovered." Maria took a deep breath and began narrating everything that had happened, from the fateful day of the kidnapping to the discovery that the Lucy's child might be her biological son. As she spoke, the officers listened attentively, taking notes. "I understand," Ramirez nodded when Maria finished. "This is a very serious and delicate situation. We need to proceed with extreme caution to ensure the child's safety," he continued. "I know, officer." Maria looked at him with desperation. "Please, help me retrieve him. I can't lose him again." "We'll do everything we can, ma'am," Officer Guzman intervened. "But first, we need to verify all the information you've provided. We'll need access to adoption records and DNA samples to confirm his identity." "Of course, I'll do whatever it takes." Maria nodded with determination. "When can you act?" "As soon as we have the evidence confirming his identity," Ramirez replied seriously. "I understand your anxiety, but you must understand we can't act hastily. The child's security is at stake." I know. Maria ran her hands through her hair in frustration. "But please hurry. I fear if that family finds out I've discovered them, they might harm my son." "I assure you we'll do everything possible to act swiftly." Guzman gave her a reassuring look. "We'll need you to accompany us to collect the records and DNA samples as soon as possible," Guzman said. Maria nodded decisively. "I'm ready when you are." The officers stood up, and Maria followed them to the police vehicle. During the journey, her mind raced with everything that was happening. Finally, she was going to be reunited with her son after so long. But the fear of something going wrong gripped her. When they arrived at the station, the officers led her to a room where they would take the DNA samples and begin processing the necessary documents. Maria felt anxious and impatient, but she tried to remain calm, knowing that urgency could jeopardize the operation. Several hours passed before the officers returned with the test results. Maria looked at them expectantly, holding her breath. "Well, ma'am," Ramirez looked at her seriously. "We've compared the samples, and the results confirm that the Lucy's child is indeed your biological son." A wave of emotion surged through Maria's throat. Finally, after so many years, she had definitive proof that her son was alive. "So, what will you do now?" she asked urgently. "Now, we will proceed to intervene at the Lucy's residence," Guzman reassured her. "We'll send an elite team to ensure the child's integrity and carry out the suspect's arrest." "Can I accompany you?" Maria pleaded. "I need to see my son. I need to hug him." "We understand, ma'am, but for your own safety and the child's, we ask that you stay here while we act," Ramirez said firmly. "We don't want to risk anything." Maria bit her lip in frustration, but she knew they were right. She couldn't jeopardize her son's safety. "All right," she reluctantly agreed. "But please be careful and bring him back to me. I beg you." We promise. Guzman gently squeezed her arm. We'll return with your son safe and sound. The officers left, leaving Maria alone with a mix of emotions. On one hand, the joy and hope of seeing her son again after so many years. But on the other hand, the fear that something could go wrong and she could lose him again. She paced back and forth in the room, unable to stay still. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for news. She silently prayed for everything to go well, for her son to be safe. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the door opened and the officers entered, accompanied by a child. Maria felt her heart skip a beat at the sight of him. It was him, there was no doubt. His eyes, his hair, his smile. Everything about him was so familiar. Tears of joy rolled down Maria's cheeks as she slowly approached the child. "Is it you, my love?" she whispered with a trembling voice. The child looked at her curiously, but a spark of recognition shone in his eyes. "Mom," he murmured, taking a hesitant step towards her. Maria couldn't hold back any longer and threw herself into his arms, holding him tightly against her chest as she cried with happiness. Her son, her little one, was back in her arms after so many years. "Yes, my darling, it's me." She kissed his forehead tenderly. "I've missed you so much." The child clung to her, beginning to cry as well. Maria rocked him gently, feeling as if a part of her heart, which had been lost all that time, had returned to its place. The officers watched them in silence, moved by the scene. Finally, Ramirez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we've detained the Lucys. They're being interrogated at the moment." Maria looked up without letting go of her son. "Did you manage to find out how it all happened? How he ended up with that family?" According to the initial testimonies, it seems that Mr. and Mrs. Lucy were responsible for the kidnapping of your son, Officer Ramirez explained. Apparently, they planned the abduction and then went through the adoption procedures to make him pass as their own child. Maria felt her blood boil with fury. How dare they snatch her son away like that? A wave of hatred washed over her. "Those monsters," she muttered through clenched teeth. "How could they do this to us?" "Calm down, ma'am," Guzman intervened, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Now, the important thing is that you have your son back. Let us take care of the rest." Maria nodded, holding her son closer to her. Finally, she had him back after so much suffering. Nothing else mattered. "Those monsters," she muttered through clenched teeth. "How could they do this to us?" "Calm down, ma'am," Guzman intervened, placing a comforting hand on her arm. "Now the important thing is that you have your son back. Let us take care of the rest." Marie nodded, holding her son tighter against her chest. Finally, she had him back after so much suffering. Nothing else mattered. "What will happen to them?" she asked, directing a glare full of resentment towards the door. "They will be charged with kidnapping, illegal adoption, and other charges. They will face a long sentence," Ramirez replied, looking at her seriously. "But that's beside the point now. The important thing is that you and your son are safe." Marie felt relief again, gently caressing her son's hair. After so many years, she felt his warmth, his scent, his gaze again. It was like a miracle. "What's your name, my love?" she asked softly. "My name is Alex," the boy replied in a faint voice. "That's what they told me." "Alex?" Marie smiled through her tears. "It's a beautiful name. But you are my little Alex, right?" The boy looked at her with eyes full of confusion and doubt. I don't know," he murmured, clinging to her. "I remember some things, but I'm not sure of anything." "Don't worry, sweetheart." Marie hugged him tighter. "You don't have to worry about anything anymore. I'm here, and I'm not going to let you go again." The officers watched the emotional reunion, hesitant to interrupt. After a few minutes, Ramirez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we regret to have to ask you to come with us to the police station. We'll need to take further statements and carry out some paperwork." Marie nodded, not letting go of her son's hand. "Of course, I understand. Let's go." Together, mother and son were escorted to the police station. During the journey, Marie couldn't stop looking at Alex, unable to believe that she finally had him back. Every time their eyes met, she felt her heart overflowing with joy. When they arrived at the station, the officers led them to an interview room. Alex held onto Marie's hand tightly, visibly scared and confused by everything that was happening. "Don't worry, my love." Marie gave him a warm smile. "I'm here with you. You have nothing to fear." The boy nodded, but his expression still held uncertainty. Marie embraced him tenderly, trying to convey security and comfort. Officers Ramirez and Guzman entered the room and took seats in front of them. "All right, let's proceed with some more detailed questions," Ramirez said, giving them a compassionate look. "Ma'am, we understand that this must be overwhelming, but we need you to provide us with all the information you can about your son's kidnapping." Marie nodded, squeezing Alex's hand. "Of course, I'll do everything I can." She took a deep breath, preparing to relive that horrible experience. It all happened 10 years ago. We were returning home after visiting some relatives when we were assaulted by criminals. In the midst of the chaos, they snatched my son away from me. We did everything we could to find him, but we never managed to locate him. Marie's voice broke as she recalled those painful moments. Alex looked at her with empathy, as if somehow understanding her suffering. "I understand," Ramirez noted in his notebook. "Do you remember any details that could help us understand what happened?" "No, everything happened so fast." Marie shook her head, struggling to hold back tears. "I only remember the desperation of seeing my son being taken away from my arms." "Afterwards?" "Nothing. Afterwards, nothing. It was as if the earth had swallowed him." "I see," the officer nodded, turning to Alex. "And you, young man, do you remember anything from your life before coming to the Martinez family?" Alex looked at him apprehensively, then glanced pleadingly at Marie. I don't know," he murmured, shrugging with uncertainty. "I have some blurry memories, but nothing clear." "It's okay. Don't pressure yourself," Guzman intervened gently. "Surely all of this is very confusing for you. But tell us, how have you felt living with the Martinez family?" Alex hesitated for a moment before responding. They have treated me well," he murmured, avoiding eye contact with the officers. "They have provided me with everything I needed, but sometimes I felt like something was missing, like I didn't quite fit in." Marie felt her heart ache as she listened. She gently caressed his face. "Oh, my love," she sighed. "I'm so sorry for everything you've had to go through, but you don't have to worry about anything anymore. You're safe with me." Alex looked at her with teary eyes, silently nodding. The officers exchanged a concerned glance. "Ma'am, we understand that this must be a very overwhelming situation for both you and young Alex," Ramirez said, looking at them with empathy. "For now, the most important thing is for you to spend some time together and start rebuilding those bonds. We'll take care of everything else." "Thank you, officer." Marie managed a tremulous smile. "I just want to get my son back and give him all the love and security he deserves." "And so it shall be," Guzman reassured them with a comforting look. "We'll make sure you can be together and receive all the support you need." Marie nodded, embracing Alex tightly. After so long, having him back in her arms was an indescribable feeling. Finally, her world seemed to make sense again. The officers informed them that they could leave and that they would keep them updated on the progress of the investigation. Marie thanked them profusely, and hand in hand with Alex, she left the police station with a mix of relief and excitement. Once outside, she stopped and looked at her son with a radiant smile. "Alex, my life," she murmured, caressing his face. "You don't know how much I've missed you." The boy looked at her with teary eyes, a mixture of confusion and hope reflected in his gaze. "I've missed you too, Mom," he whispered, throwing himself into her arms. "Even though I don't remember much, I feel like it's you." Marie held him tightly, kissing his head, feeling all the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. Finally, after so many years of despair, her son was back. "Let's go home, sweetheart," she said softly. "We have plenty of time ahead of us to make up for lost time." Alex nodded, holding on to her as they walked together. Marie felt her heart was about to burst with joy. Nothing else mattered, just having her son safely by her side. As they journeyed, Alex looked around with curiosity, as if trying to recognize the way. Marie watched him tenderly, wishing she could erase all the suffering and confusion from his gaze. When they arrived at Marie's modest apartment, the boy hesitated at the entrance, eyeing the place warily. "Is this where you live, Mom?" he asked softly. "Yes, my love." Marie smiled sweetly. "It may not be as luxurious as the Lucy mansion, but it's our home, and now you're back with me." Alex nodded, cautiously stepping into the small space. Marie closed the door behind them and turned to him, taking his hands in hers. "I know this must all be very confusing and overwhelming for you," she murmured, looking at him with infinite tenderness. "But I want you to know that I'm here, that I won't ever leave you alone again. We're going to rebuild our life together, step by step." The boy observed her in silence, his eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. Finally, he nodded shyly. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "I trust you." Marie felt tears welling up in her eyes. She hugged Alex gently, kissing his forehead. "I love you so much, my darling," she whispered with a choked voice. "Thank you for being back with me." They remained like that for several minutes, enjoying the warmth and security of the embrace. Marie felt her heart filling with a joy she hadn't experienced in a decade. Finally, they parted, and Marie gave him a reassuring smile. "How about we prepare something to eat? You must be hungry." Alex nodded, offering a faint smile. "Yes, a little." "Very well." Marie gently stroked his cheek. "Let's go to the kitchen then. I'm eager to cook for you." Together, mother and son headed to the small kitchen. Marie was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions. After so much suffering and despair, Alex was back by her side. And although she knew they still had a long road ahead, in that moment, all that mattered was enjoying each other's company, reuniting and beginning to weave the bonds that had been so violently torn apart. As she prepared a simple yet comforting dish, Marie watched Alex closely, memorizing each of his gestures and expressions. It was hard for her to believe that after so many years, her son was finally safe with her. "Do you like the stew, dear?" she asked softly, serving him a steaming plate. "Yes, Mom," Alex offered a timid smile. "It smells delicious." Marie returned the smile, feeling her heart could burst with joy. Seeing him there, sitting at her table, seemed like a dream come true. After so much suffering and despair, her son was back. She sat across from him, silently watching him eat, delighting in every gesture, every expression on his face. Having him back Seeing him and knowing that nothing and no one would separate them anymore felt like a miracle. "Is it good?" she asked, almost fearfully, as if afraid everything would vanish in an instant. "Yes, Mom. It's delicious." Alex gave her a sincere smile that went straight to her heart. Marie sighed with relief and returned the smile, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. Slowly, the tension that had accumulated over all those years began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace and fulfillment that she hadn't experienced in a long time. They spoke little during dinner. Alex still seemed somewhat shy and overwhelmed by everything that was happening, and Marie respected his silence, not wanting to pressure him. She simply enjoyed his company, being able to look into his eyes without pain and despair clouding her vision. When they finished eating, Marie cleared the dishes and took them to the sink. Alex watched her closely, as if trying to etch each of her movements into his memory. "Mum," he suddenly murmured softly. Marie turned to him, feeling her heart skip a beat. "Tell me, my love." She approached and sat beside him, gently taking his hand. Alex looked at her with eyes shining with contained tears. "Is it true what those police officers said? Are you really my mother?" he asked tremulously. Marie felt tears filling her eyes. She nodded slowly, affectionately squeezing her son's hand. "Yes, dear, I am your mother." She caressed his cheek tenderly. "I had to let you go a long time ago, but now you've come back to me, and nothing and no one will ever separate us again. I promise." Alex looked at her with a mix of disbelief and relief. A sob escaped his throat, and he threw himself into Marie's arms, clinging to her desperately. "Mom," he exclaimed through tears, "I've missed you so much." Marie hugged him tightly, letting her own tears flow freely down her cheeks. Finally, after so many years, her son had come home. "Here I am, my love," she whispered, stroking his hair tenderly. "Here I am, and I'm never going to let you go again." They remained embraced for long minutes, letting the emotion and relief flood every fiber of their beings. Marie felt her heart beating with renewed strength, as if a part of it that had been lost all that time had returned to its place. When they finally pulled apart, Alex looked at her with a trembling smile. "I have so many questions," he murmured, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. "I know, my love." Marie returned the smile, gently wiping his cheeks. "And I promise, we'll find all the answers together. But for now, the only thing that matters is that you're here, with me." Alex nodded, leaning against Marie's chest. She enveloped him in a warm embrace, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. Together, mother and son, they would begin to rebuild the bonds that had been so cruelly torn apart. It would be a long road, full of challenges, but Marie was determined to do whatever it took to make up for lost time and give Alex the love and security he deserved. Nothing else mattered. After so many years of suffering and hopelessness, their family was reunited, and this time, nothing and no one would tear them apart. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and watch these others.